today's Chavches. So Rav Asi Amar Rabbi said that a zor that arranges the maracha is chayiv. So on that, Rabbi Zera had a question that it's why is he chayiv? It's an avodah that's kosher by night, and any avodah that's kosher by night is not a zor is not chayiv misa for. Okay, so that was the Gemara before. Now, there are those who say the question was a little bit different. Is there any avodah which there's another avodah afterwards, and it's possible the zar? If you remember back by Gedalia and BAYT, Rav and Levi, they said the four avodas which are possible by a zar, the general rules were that if it has to be a final avodah, and it has to be a avodah of placing on and not removing. So any avodah which is not a final avodah, so setting up the marach is not the final step. The final step is putting on the shnei gezira eitzim, putting on 2 blocks of wood. And if so, setting up the marach you should not be chayav misa for. And in fact, so both the Rashi and the Gra take out the next 2 questions because in fact they have no place here. Because it says very avarim p'tarim is soif avodah the YOMA. In fact, because Rashi back on Ital and BAYT actually says that in fact that is a soif avodah, so that it's not a question. In fact, it's actually a proof. And Shumas Hadeshin also is a machlekes Rav and Levi. So, and Rashi says we're not getting into that. So in fact, so that's the question of Rabbi Zera. So the way Rashi has it and the Gra, so the question is, it's not an avodah tama, it's not a final avodah. So why is the zar chayav misa for setting up the ma'aracha? So Gemara says Ella. So he's going to take out the next 4.5 lines. So Ella iyet marhachin. Rather, if Rabbi Asi, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, says something, he said as follows: Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, zar shesider shnei gziri eitzim chayav. The zar says up that 2 gziri eitzim is chayav. Also, we had this back on Chavdalat on BAYT. This was a machlekes Rabbi Yochanan and Rav and Levi. And so we're right. And what's the reason? Because it's an avodah tama. It's a final avodah. It's the final setting up of the maracha. In fact, Rav and Levi argued back on Chavdalat and BAYT. They said, in fact, the setting up of the avarim on the mizbeach is actually considered part of the same avodah. Rabbi Yochanan argued. He says no. There is a end unto itself of setting up the maracha, and that being the case, the shnei gezira eitzim is the final act of the avodah. If it is an avodah tama, so you should need a payas. So, and if it's a chashiv, it's a day avodah, it's as far as Chaim is avodah tama, so you should need a payas. So when it says v'loi ba'y payas, you don't have a payas, you do. Nevatani, we learned in the Brisa, Mi shazacha b'trumas hadeshin yizka b'sidor shnei gziri eitzim. The one who was zaycha in the trumas hadeshin is zaycha in the 2 gziri eitzim. So Gemara says, Hachika Amar yefaitu lo b'fnei atzma. If it's so chashuv and avodah, it's an avodah tama, you should need a pais for itself. And keep in mind, in the first ikadamri of Rabbi Zera, this was not a question. Because there we said yes, it's an avodah, but it doesn't require its own pais. Now, once we say it's a final avodah, and every final avodah needs a pais, so that it's a stronger question now in this part of the Gemara. So Gemara says kidaminan. So either kidaminan or ela kidaminan, depends on your girsa. So kidaminan would imply that, as we answered before, in fact, originally the answer kidamina would mean that originally it had its own pais, and what happened was people were fighting over the people. Originally, what happened was people did not want to do the trumas hadeshin. So the takana, this is the beginning of the parak, and so what they were saking that whoever got the trumas hadeshin also arranged the maracha and put up the shnei gezira eitzim. But originally it had its own payas, and just as a tekana they combined it with the other avodah. So that's the first way you're reading it. Second way you're reading it is ela kidaminan. That in fact we're completely discounting the second ikadamri of Rabbi Zera. Okay, and because it's such a strong question that we don't, in fact, does not have its own bias. Okay, fine. And so Gemara says, "Lemimra de avoda tama." So, going back on Rava's question, Rava said that we see from here that any avoda tama needs its own pious. So, Lemimra de avoda tama v'zar chayiv alei misa by a pious. So it means to say that any final avoda and that which a zar is chayiv misa for needs a pious. And ein zar chayiv alei misa loy by a pious. And if a zar is not chayiv misa, you don't need a pious. But a shchita, there you have a pious. A zar is not chayav misa, but still there's a pious for it. So Gemara says, "Shani shchita d'tchilas avoda diyammehi." It's the beginning of the avoda of the day. So in fact, it makes it's everyone wants it, and so in order so that the Kohanim should not fight over it, we're masaking that there should be a pious over it. It's the beginning. It was very chashuv in the Kohanim's eyes, so that's why there's a pious. So Rashi and the girls take out the next few lines. These ones actually, I'm not sure why, but because here they were asking also. The way Rashi said it is that the way Rashi said before is that the Gemara is getting mixed up from Rabbi Zera before and Rabbi Zera here. But in fact, once we asked the question before, we don't really have to ask it here again. And here the question is of L'mimra de avoda. I'll just read it quickly. So L'mimra de avoda tama by payis avoda sheish achriya avoda loy by payis, to mean to say that only an avoda, a final avoda, needs a lot for it, not a avoda that there's another avoda following it. Very varim u'pdarim, which assumingly there is avoda afterwards at night, which in fact is meaning setting up the Menachem for the day, I guess. So could be that's why they take it out, because it's really there isn't any avoda afterwards. In fact, that's what the Gemara, if you have our girsa, that's what it says. Seif avoda diyamahi. It's the end of the day avoda. In fact, it's not really such a strong question, because in fact there is, even at night, there really is no avoda afterwards. And also Hari Chumas Hadeshen, that even though it's the beginning of the avoda, and still we have a pious. And so again, Rashi before said the reason why it's not a question here is because it's really machlekes Rav and Levi, so we don't really need it. However, so Gemara says, so the reason why we have a pious is in fact because of Ma'aseh Shahaya. So the kind of were fighting over it, people got hurt, so we instituted a pious. So Amar Marzutra.
What's the word after Chumas Hadeshen?
Sorry?
Why would you think Chumas Hadeshen wouldn't need a pious?
Only because it's not a final avoda.
What's right after that makes it not final?
There's this Chumas Hadeshen, then there's removing the Haitzas Hadeshen also.
Oh.
Yeah, so in fact, it could be that's also why you take it out. That's actually true. Rashi back on also, yeah. Sugin back on Chaftala and Raize.
You said that's not part of the Veda, taking it out. So
yeah. And in fact, they said it is an avoda tama, and the reason why is there would not be Chaim is because it's not an avoda of placing him, an avodas matana. It's a avoda of siluk, but in fact, it is an avoda tama. So actually, yeah, that makes sense why they take it out, because it is an avoda tama, a final avoda. That's right. Sorry, that's right. So Gemara says, we also learned, like in a Mishnah, like Rabbi Yochanan, not like Rav, that in fact the Shnei Gzir Eisim is the final avoda of setting up the Maracha, and arranging the Avarim, the fats and the limbs of the Karbanos on the Mizbeach is considered a different avoda, the beginning of a new avoda, not the end of this one. And the Mishnah goes as follows: Amalahem Hamamuna, back to the beginning of our parak. Beginning of the next parak. Come and see if the time for shechita has arrived. It doesn't say go and see if it's time for arranging the maracha, for arranging two final blocks on the maracha has arrived yet. We didn't say that, assumingly, because that's kosher to be done at night. In other words, it's not an avodah of the day. It's not considered part of the avodah of the Talmud of arranging the Evarim and Pedarim on it, because that's a day avodah, and this could even be done at night. We see it's a completely different avodah. So Gemara says that's not necessarily true, because hach could be hach deles like the kanta ketani, hach deles like the kanta like ketani. The Mishnah only mentions things which have no takana afterwards, meaning the Mimuna only made sure that it was daylight before shechting the tamid, but because that you can't go back on, because if you arrange the meracha during the nighttime improperly, so you could redo it during the day. But if you shech the tamid at night, so then you can't do anything about it. It's shechted already. So that's why they specifically mentioned shechting the tamid as part of the avodah, which had to be done during the day. But in truth, really could be that Shnei Gziri Eitzim also had to be done during the day. But it wasn't so much focused on, because even if you did it improperly at night, you could still redo it. Okay, so Hadron Lach, Barishayna, Hadron Chalan. Okay. So now we start the third parak.
We're finished.
Yeah, so Amar Lahem HaMamuna, the Mamuna, the Sigan, Kohen, the assistant, I guess, so said that, and this happened every morning, and this wasn't, we haven't gone to the void of Yom Kippur yet. So Uru Imigia Zman Shchita Kohen, see if the time for Shchita has arrived. Imigia, if it had arrived, Haray Aimer, the one who was watching, see if the sun had risen. Aimer Barkai said, Barkai, that's comes from Barak, it's shining, it's bright. Masya ben Shmuel Aimer Heyer Pnei Kol Hamizach Ad Sheba Chevrein. He would say, and the question is who would say, the Gemara will discuss, has the entire eastern face lit up until Chevrein? V'hu Amar Hein, he said yes. The question who said what, the Gemara will explain. So why did we need this whole procedure of is it bright outside yet? Just look if the sun is out. So Gemara says, just look if the sun is on the floor of the Beis Mikdash. So Gemara says, no, because Shapam Achas Allah Me'or Halavana. There was one time that there was light in the Beis Mikdash, and it was the light of the moon, and they thought it was the sunlight coming in. So v'shachtu es tamid, they shechted the tamid, and once they found out that it really was the moonlight, not the sunlight, they had to take it out to get burned. They couldn't put it on the mizbeach. Okay, then Haridu Kohen Gadol Beis Tzvi, Kohen Gadol went down to the Beis Tzvi. The Gemara later, tomorrow's DAF, will say what it's doing here. Okay, so because this isn't speaking about Yom Kippur, so then we'll discuss what that line is doing here. So Gemara says, this is the general rule. This was the general rule in the Mikdash. Anyone went to the bathroom, so he needs to go to the mikvah. Let's see. Lesson 4, I'm going to the bathroom. So Ketanim. So Ton Kidosh Yadayim Reglaim, you just have to wash his hands and feet by the kiyar. He didn't have to go to the mikvah though. But so the Gemara says, start the Gemara. Tanya Rabbi Shmuel Aimer Barak Barkai, that he would say Barak Barkai, that meaning it has lit up. Barak Barkai, that it has both expressions of light, and it's light. Rabbi Kiva Aimer Allah Barkai, the light has risen. Rashi says it's shining farther. Okay, yes, it's shining very far. Nichuma ben Apak Shiyon Aimer Af Barkai Bechevrein. It's also the light has. You can see the light even in Chevrein. Masya ben Shmuel says that Hamamuna ala Paisos Aimer, the one appointed over the Paisos, would say, Heyer Pnei Kol Hamidach Ad Shebechevrein, the entire eastern face is lit up until Chevrein. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira Aimer. So, sorry, the way to read all these is that Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira, he said that Aimer, the person, would say, Heyer Pnei Kol Hamidach Ad Bechevrein, V'yatzu Kol Ha'am Ish Lamalachtai, that the entire eastern face is lit up until Chevrein, and everyone has gone out to their work. All the day workers, they go out. Says that they would go out from Neshama. That okay.
So if it was a cloudy, rainy day and they can't see the light, they would just estimate where it should have been?
Pretty much. And truth, the Gemara is going to say later that even on a cloudy day, you can still tell when it gets light.
When it gets light,
yeah. Also keep in mind, when the sun rises, it's very low on the horizon, so it's very uncommon to have clouds down there. So when the sun rises, you usually have it, usually see it. And the Gemara says later, even if you didn't, it still gets light. So even if there's no sun rays. So okay, so Gemara says, if so, that the people are going out to their work, and that's already when it's very light. So, and that's not the first possible moment. So Gemara says, let's go pailim amid, and that means to go out to hire workers. In other words, when a balabais wants to go out and find workers for him, so he has to go out before the time of working has arrived. So we're speaking about more close to Amud HaShachar than Eitz. Okay. So Amar of Safra Tzlosi de Avram, the Tefillah of Avram, referring to Mincha, interestingly enough. Not exactly. Right, so they say a couple of pshatim. One is that Avram Avinu was just mentioned because really all of us have been chakras. Remember Rabbi Ital came a couple of weeks ago and said yeah, we're talking about Mincha. But in fact, really, I think Rabbi Ital said that Aryai saying that really all the avos davened all the tefillos. It's just who was masakin each one. And in fact, they say that Avram Avinu was mentioned because he was the Iker. He was the main one. He was the first one. Okay. In fact, actually Taisus in Brachos they actually bring the Gedalia actually brings down to be looking at Taisus in Brachos. He actually says you'll actually have to say this Gemara came after Yitzchak Avinu was masakin Mincha. And it only mentions Avram Avinu because he's the Iker one.
So Yitzchak started it, but Avram did it also. Right.
Yes. So because we're referring to Mincha over here. And the tefillah of Mincha is Mikima Shachri Kaisali, when the walls, any eastern, Rashi says really any eastern wall, not necessarily in the Beis Hamikdash. They won't also go to the Beis Hamikdash shortly.
Maybe the prayer of Abraham. Maybe it means Abraham always did everything with Raize. So when he he started early, maybe he
that's true.
Any time in the afternoon.
That's true. The Gemara can mention that also. That we're speaking about Zechus. That as soon as you go in the second past Chatzos, you're allowed to daven Mincha. But actually, Paskin, you have to wait a little, like half an hour afterwards. Mincha Gedalia, and that's how they did in the Beis Hamikdash, or because that's how they did in the Beis Hamikdash. But it was originally masakin from the point of Chatzos and onwards, when the walls get darker. Meaning, if you have a narrow wall, so the sun veers a tiny bit towards the west, so then the eastern face of the wall gets dark. Okay. So Amar Rav Yosef Anan me Avram Menachem v'Neimar, we can learn from Avram Avinu. Rashi says he was a Zarus, and meaning, so if he started the exact second after Chatzos, so we learn from there that's the time we're supposed to daven. Others ask that the question is based on that. Do we really learn from the avos they were before Mount Torah? Do we learn from how they acted to how halach l'maisa? In fact, the Gemara's come out really we do. So okay, so Amar Rava says back, Tana Gamar me Avram v'Anan like Amina Minei. In fact, it's true. The Tana did learn from Avram Avinu in another case, so we can't. So the Tanya, as we learned in the Raize, Uvir Hashemini Yimoyel Basar Olasai. Melame to Kol Hayoim Kasher Lamilo. So we see from here the entire day is kosher for bris milah. Elash has reason makdimim l'mitzvos. But we say it's reason makdimim l'mitzvos. We do it as early in the morning as possible. Neshanemar Ashkim Avraham Ba'Baker Vayachavosh. Okay, and the Bach was in the end of the pasuk also.
Right.
So So Avram got up in the morning, that's to do the Akedah. So we see that there is a concept of a Zrizim Makdim L'Mitzvahs, and we do learn from Avram Avinu that you have to be a Zaris. So if so, we should be davening Mincha the moment after Chatzos. Ella Amar, and according to the way the Gedalia learns a question that we see we do learn from Avram Avinu how to pass on halacha. Ella Amar, Rava says, Rav Yosef Hakakash Ale. Rav Yosef, that in other words, because of this question, we see that we do paskin from Avram Avinu. We do learn from him to be a Zaris. So that couldn't have been Rav Yosef's question. So really, this was Rav Yosef's question. That's not we learned in the Mishnah. Chal Arvei Pesachim Lias Erev Shabbos. If Erev Pesach falls on Erev Shabbos, Nishchat B'Sheish U'Mechza V'Kari B'Sheva U'Mechza. So when Erev Pesach falls on Erev Shabbos, so everything's very rushed to do the Shechita before Shkia. So we do the Korban, the Tamid Tamid as early as possible. And the earliest possible time is from 6.5 hours into the day, and from there we learn to Mincha nowadays. It's from Sheishu Mechza. So, if so, Rav Yosef had a question, why do you have to wait 6.5 hours, wait 6 hours, wait till Chatzos? The moment Chatzos hits, bring the Tamid, the walls are dark, and bring the Korban Pesach. So Gemara says, my kasha. What's the question? Maybe if you looked at the if you ever go to the Kaisel, so that's not the wall of the Beis Mikdash, it's the outer wall, but the walls of the Beis Mikdash were also extremely tall, and that being the case, they're not directly straight up. To make it sturdier, it was actually slanted a little bit. And therefore, in fact, the eastern part of the wall does not get dark until a little bit after Chatzos, till 6.5 hours into the day, because the wall is not exactly straight. It's slanted a little bit. And the Inami, another answer is Shani Avram the Istakninus Gedalia Hoisa Belibai. He knew the exact moment of Chatzos, so he was able to daven right after Chatzos. We who are not so proficient exactly the moment of Chatzos, so we wait half an hour just to remove ourselves from Safek. Inami Mishum Zakin Yesh Yeshiva Hava, it's the same point that he knew exactly his astronomy, but it's not that he knew his science, but rather because he was a Zakin of Yesh Yeshiva, he was constantly learning. Also keep in mind, when the Gemara says Yeshiva, doesn't mean Yeshiva as we know it, because it's whenever the Gemara refers to a Yeshiva as we know it, it's always called a Beirav, Tanvid Devei Rabbi Shmuel. It's referred to as a house, meaning they lived there. Yeshiva here means they would always have a time that was set for learning, meaning they would. Gemara Shabbos says, first question, and one of the questions they ask you when you go up is Kavata Yitim Torah. So that's Yeshiva means you're constantly learning. It's a focus. The Amar Rabbi Chanina Mimein Shalavosinu like Parsha Yeshiva Mehem. In the days of our fathers, they never had the yeshiva left from them. They never stopped learning, and that's how they got to the level of being a zakin. The Gemara in Kedushin says zakin is a kana chachma, one who has acquired chachma. And Hayu b'Mitzrayim yeshiva, when they were in Mitzrayim, they had a yeshiva. And Marsha says why specifically Mitzrayim is that mentioned first. It says because by the avos, when it says zakin, you might think that zakin means literally they were just saying that they were getting old. So by Mitzrayim, though, you cannot possibly say that the Shivim Zakinim were the 70 elders. It's a mistranslation. That can't be that all these 70 people who they went to for guidance. It can't be that they were picked out because they were old. That's not true. So Shnemar Lechves Hafta Ziknei Yisrael, go and gather the Ziknei Yisrael. It doesn't mean the elders. It means the Chachamim.
Well learned. Learned.
Yes, that's it. Well learned.
Kind of Chachma.
Yes, exactly. That's the but the Marsha says based on Mitzrayim it cannot mean the elders because they weren't only chosen for their age. Okay. How you been midbar yeshiva iman in the midbar? They also the yeshiva. Shnemar esvali shivim ish music. They Yisrael gather 70 men from the Chachamim, the wise men of Bnei Yisrael. Okay, and now we go through all the drushes about the Avos. Avram Avinu Zaki Yeshiva Haya. Also, the point is that he was kind of Chachma because he was constantly learning. Shenemar ve'Avram Zakein Baba Yamim. He was a Zakein Baba Yamim. In fact, in this pasuk you don't find, in these pasukim you don't find he was in yeshiva. So the point is that he was a Zakein, meaning he was kind of Chachma. And how is that? Because he was Yoshev Yeshiva. And Yitzchak Avinu Zakein Yoshev Yeshiva Haya. Also Yitzchak Avinu Shenemar Vayhiki Zakein Yitzchak. Also, Moshe goes through all these psukim and saying why it cannot be that literal translation that means that they were old. Because, and by Yitzchak it says earlier in the pasuk before he became old. So this, but the second time it says it must mean to tell you he was a chacham. Yaakov Avinu Zakin V'Yoshev Yeshiva Haya. Also by Yaakov Shnemar says V'Inei Yisrael Kavdu Mi Zayken. They had gone close from old age, literally we think it's from old age. The Gemara is telling you, no, it means not because he was old, rather that he was a chacham. In truth, this one could actually be a drasha. Literally could mean he was old, but for a drasha it means that he was wise, he was a chacham. Also, Eliezer Eved Avram Zakim Yoshev Yeshiva Haya. He's also a chacham and he was also constantly learning. Shemar Vayomer Avraham El Avdai Zekan Beisai Hamashal B'Chol Asher Lai. So here again, it doesn't say he was a zaken, he was old. He calls him a Zekan Beisai, the wise one of his house, who was Moshe B'Chol Asher Lai, who was in charge of everything. Amar Rabbi Elazar Hashem Moshe B'Teiras Rabbi, and the drasha of the end of the pasuk is he was Moshel B'Teiras Rabbi. He was in charge of, meaning he had a firm grasp on it, on all the Torah of his master. And along the same lines, who domestic Eliezer, Amar Rabbi Elazar Shadoyle Umashke B'Teiras Shel Rabbi. Domestic Vidarshin Shadoyle Umashke. He would literally draw out and give to drink from the Torah of his master La'acherim, to others. Okay, Amarav, and this is a more famous Gemara. So Chaim Avram Avinu Kol Torah Kula, he was Mekayim the entire Torah. Shnemar Ekev Asher Shema Avraham Mekali, because Avram Avinu listened to my voice. Gaimer. So Amar Lei Rav Simim Barachia Rav Ve'ima Sheva Mitzvahs. Maybe the fact that he listened, maybe is the Sheva Mitzvahs because it was before Mount Torah. So Gemara says can't be because Ikanami Mila. We see he kept Mila also, so it can't just be the Sheva Mitzvahs. So Ve'imla Sheva Mitzvahs for Mila. Maybe true Avram Avinu got the special tzivoy of Mila, but besides that he only had the tzivoy of the Sheva Mitzvahs. So maybe he only kept what he was commanded. Who says he kept anything extra beyond what he was commanded? Amarlei Imkein Mitzvah Sai Lamali. Why the end of the pasuk says he kept his mitzvahs and the Torahs. So mitzvahs implies all the mitzvahs and the Torah too. And from here, the Marsha and the Mizrahi and pretty much everyone, the Ramban, they all ask questions. If so, how could it be that Yaakov married two sisters? How could it be that it sounds like they didn't keep all the Torah in a few places? Finum fed the Menachem Basar V'Chalav says he didn't keep Bris Mila. Okay, so they have various explanations. That they weren't in Eretz Yisrael, and Mila had to be at Tzivoy. He couldn't keep it before he was commanded by the Menachem. Because he knew they were Menachem, and so that's Ramban and Parshas Todos. So and the Rishon.
It's their homework, huh?
Pretty much, yeah. And it's a rather long marshal here also. and Mizrachi and Chumash, just to put out a few more Mekayimers. Okay, so Amar Rav or the oh, sorry.
No, I think. Unless I skipped.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, there is. So Amar Rav or Rava, the Gedalia changes it to so V'tim Rav Ashi. Chaim of Avinu afilu eru ve'tavshilin. He even kept eru ve'tavshilin. Shnemar Torah soy achas Torah shebiksav achas Torah sheval peh. Not only Torah shebiksav, even Torah sheval peh. And Marsha puts in why eru ve'tavshilin involved with the Rabbanans. He says because that the Rabbanan is only for a shmira for Shabbos. It's only a zechira for Shabbos that you should that what you're making now you have in mind is for Shabbos, not for Yom Tov. In other words, it's to keep in mind that on Yom Tov you're going to be cooking for Shabbos. Right. But in fact, Erev Tashilin is not it's a takana for a derabanan, meaning you're not doing it. Meaning without Erev Tashilin, to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos is only a derabanan anyway. So it's a takana derabanan for a derabanan. Mm-hmm. So he says even if Avinu kept even that. Okay, so now we just do the next two notes. So Masya ben Shmuel Aimer v'chlu v'hu Aimer Hein. Right, so they said, is it even to Chevron? He said yes. So Man Amar Hein, who said yes? So Ilema Hach Dekoya Igo, if you're going to say it's one who was on the roof, who Cholim v'hu Mavasher, he's streaming and he's explaining it, meaning he's asking the question, is it Til Chevron? And he says yes, it's Til Chevron. So Elo Hach Dekoya Ara, rather going to say the one on the ground said yes. So Minayada, so where does he know it from? Meaning he's on the ground. So So two answers. One, it's the person on the ground. One, it's the person on the roof. So as follows: it's the one on the roof. Amar Ihu, the one on the roof, said as follows: He said the entire eastern to the east is all lit up. The ones on the ground said to him, they asked a question until Chevron. He said yes, even the Chevron. Or it's the other way around. It's the one on the ground. Amar Ihu is the entire eastern face lit up. And he says and the one on the roof said, in fact, yes, until it's lit up until Chevron. And the person on the ground said, hey, yes, that's what I meant to ask. That's what I meant. Mm-hmm. That, yes, it's lit up until Chevron. Okay.
Why did you need to put such a strong light? You see it all the way? What?
Could be to make 100% sure that it's called daytime. Yeah, I mean, the beginning of the Amud.
Big distance.
Yeah, it's true.
Qualified that we wouldn't know that's day.
I'm not sure, actually. That's a good question.
This could be connected to the others somehow, the base of the right in the base of Mikdash.
So, I mean, Rashi says Chevron is mentioned because that's the Kivrei Avos. But the, in the top of the Amud, is it Barak Barkei, is it Oila Barkei, it seems to be a question, how light did it have to be before the Vayda?
I think he says our tefillos go from here to Chevron, or from Chevron to Beis Mikdash, or something like that.
And Brachos,
yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.